Get your filthy hands away from that piano! Caroline Ashworth's shriek exploded across the ballroom like a gunshot. She lunged forward and grabbed the janitor's collar, her 10-carat diamond ring cutting into his throat. "You think someone like you belongs near something this valuable?" She shoved him backward so hard he stumbled into his cleaning cart. Mop water splashed across the Persian rug. "This instrument costs more than your entire bloodline will ever be worth." 200 of Manhattan's wealthiest elite watched in delighted silence. Some pulled out phones, others laughed openly. But Caroline wasn't finished. She snatched the engagement ring from her finger and slammed it onto the piano's music stand. "Tell you what, boy, play this piano and I'll marry you on the spot." The room erupted in cruel amusement. What happened next would destroy a billion-dollar empire and resurrect a forgotten genius. Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and follow this incredible story to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Now let me take you back to where everything began. 12 hours earlier, the 4:30 a.m. subway rattled through darkness beneath Manhattan. Marcus Thompson sat alone in the flickering light, his reflection staring back from the grimy window. 29 years old, 3 jobs, 18-hour days, and a dream he had buried so deep he sometimes forgot it existed. His phone buzzed. Text from Destiny. "Mom's dialysis ran long. Doctor says we need to talk about the surgery. It's urgent, Marcus." The surgery. $45,000. Marcus closed his eyes and let his head fall back against the cold plastic seat. 45,000. They couldn't afford $45 right now. His phone buzzed again. Destiny. "I'm scared." "What are we going to do?" Marcus typed back. "I'll figure it out. I always do. Get some sleep." But he had no idea how to figure it out. He was already working 3 jobs, already giving every penny to his mother's treatment and his sister's education, already running on 4 hours of sleep and pure desperation. What else could he possibly give? The train screeched to a stop. Marcus shouldered his worn backpack and climbed toward street level, where Manhattan's towers pierced the pre-dawn sky like monuments to wealth he would never touch. By 5:15 a.m., he was pushing his cleaning cart through the marble lobby of the Meridian Club. "Thompson, you're 3 minutes late." Marcus stopped. His supervisor, a red-faced man named Gerald, stormed toward him with a clipboard. "I'm sorry, sir. The train was—" "I don't care about the train. I care about these floors being spotless before the members arrive." Gerald shoved the clipboard into Marcus's chest. "Mrs. Ashworth is hosting a gala tonight. Everything needs to be perfect. You understand perfect?" "Yes, sir." "And stay away from the music room. Mrs. Ashworth specifically requested that no service staff enter that area. The piano is being prepared for tonight's event." Marcus nodded. "Understood." Gerald walked away muttering about incompetent workers and impossible standards. Marcus began mopping his strokes long and practiced. He had been invisible in this world for 7 years now, moving through rooms full of people who looked past him like he was furniture, cleaning up after conversations he was never invited to join. Sometimes he wondered if he was even real anymore. His phone buzzed again. This time a voicemail notification. He pressed play and held the phone to his ear. "Marcus, baby, it's Mama." Her voice was weak, tired, but she was trying to sound strong for him. She always tried. "I know you're worried about this surgery business, but I want you to stop that worrying. You hear me? God's got a plan. He didn't bring us this far to leave us now. You just focus on your work and taking care of yourself. I love you, baby. I love you so much." The message ended. Marcus stood frozen in the empty hallway, mop dripping onto marble that cost more than his annual salary. God's got a plan. But what if God's plan was for him to watch his mother die because he couldn't afford to save her? He pushed the thought away and continued mopping. One stroke, then another, the rhythm of survival. By 7:00 a.m., the club began filling with members. Men in tailored suits discussing stock portfolios. Women in designer dresses planning charity galas that cost more than they actually donated. Marcus moved among them like a ghost, present but unseen, necessary but unacknowledged. He was refilling a water station when he heard her voice for the first time. "The piano needs to be repositioned. It's catching the light wrong." Marcus looked up. Caroline Ashworth stood in the center of the ballroom like a queen surveying her kingdom. Platinum blonde hair, ice blue eyes, a Chanel suit that cost more than most cars. She was beautiful in the way that glaciers are beautiful. Cold, deadly, utterly indifferent to the destruction she could cause. "And I want fresh flowers on every table," she continued, snapping her fingers at a terrified assistant. "Not those cheap arrangements. Real orchids, flown in from Thailand." "Yes, Mrs. Ashworth. Right away." Caroline's gaze swept across the room, cataloging everything that might need correction. Her eyes passed over Marcus without stopping. He didn't exist to her. He was wallpaper, background noise, part of the machinery that made her comfortable life possible. Marcus finished refilling the water station and pushed his cart toward the service corridor. But something made him stop at the ballroom's glass doors. The piano, a Steinway grand positioned center stage, ebony surface gleaming under crystal chandeliers, sheet music open on the stand. Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor. Marcus's heart clenched. He knew that piece, had played it for his senior recital at Howard University, back when professors called him extraordinary. Back when Juilliard offered him a full scholarship. Back when the future stretched before him like an endless symphony waiting to be composed. Before the scaffolding collapsed. Before his father died. Before he became invisible. His fingers twitched involuntarily, muscle memory stirring after years of silence, the need to play rising in his chest like a tide that had been held back too long. "Hey, Thompson." Marcus spun around. Gerald was marching toward him, face purple with anger. "What did I tell you about the music room?" "I wasn't going in, sir. I was just..." "Just what? Just standing there staring like some kind of creep." Gerald grabbed Marcus's arm and yanked him away from the doors. "Mrs. Ashworth sees you anywhere near that piano, you're fired. Understand, fired." "Yes, sir. I understand." Gerald released him with a shove. "Get back to work, and stay invisible." Stay invisible. Marcus had been hearing those words his entire adult life. Stay invisible. Don't cause trouble. Don't reach for things that aren't meant for people like you. He pushed his cart toward the service elevator, but he couldn't stop thinking about that piano, about the Chopin, about the person he used to be before survival became his only occupation. At noon, he took his 15-minute break in the basement utility closet, the only place in the building where he could exist without being reminded that he didn't belong. His phone buzzed. Destiny. "Marcus, I got the letter. Columbia accepted me." He sat up straight, heart pounding. "Marcus." "What, are you serious?" "Destiny. Full academic scholarship. I'm going to be a doctor." "Marcus, I'm really going to be a doctor." Tears sprung to his eyes. All the sacrifice, all the invisible hours, all the dreams he had buried so she could chase hers. It was worth it. Every second was worth it. Destiny. But there's something else. They want a music supplement. An original composition performed by a skilled pianist. If I submit one by Friday, I qualify for the arts scholarship too. That's $20,000 extra per year. Marcus stared at the screen. Destiny. I wrote something for Dad. It's called The Scaffold, about his sacrifice, about how he fell so we could rise. But I need someone to record it, someone who can really play. Marcus. Destiny. Destiny. You're the only one, Marcus. Please. I know you haven't played in years. I know you gave it up for us. But please, just this once, for Dad. His hands trembled as he typed. Marcus. Send me the composition. I'll look at it tonight. Destiny. Thank you. I love you so much. Marcus set his phone down and stared at the concrete wall of the utility closet. For 7 years, he had convinced himself that music was his past, that survival was his present, that dreams were luxuries he couldn't afford. But Destiny's message had cracked something open inside him. A door he thought he had sealed forever. Maybe it was time to stop being invisible. Or maybe not. His break was over. He had 6 more hours of cleaning before the gala. 6 more hours of existing without being seen. Marcus grabbed his mop and headed back upstairs. The afternoon passed in a blur of polishing silver and arranging chairs. The ballroom transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal and gold and flowers that cost more than his mother's monthly dialysis. By 6:00 p.m., the first guests began arriving. Marcus had been assigned to the coat check station, tucked away in a corner, where he could work without offending anyone with his presence. But he could still see the ballroom through the open doors. Could still see the piano waiting on its stage like a throne without a king. Could still hear the music in his head. "Excuse me, boy." Marcus turned. A silver-haired woman in diamonds was holding out her fur coat with 2 fingers, as if touching it for too long might contaminate it. "Yes, ma'am." "This is genuine mink. If there's a single mark on it when I leave, I'll have you fired and arrested. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll be very careful." She walked away without another glance. Marcus hung the coat with exaggerated care, then stood in his corner and watched the parade of wealth flow past him. These were the people who controlled the world, who decided which medicines cost $50 and which cost $5,000, who determined whether families like his lived or died based on spreadsheets and stock prices. They didn't see him. They never saw him. And that invisibility he was beginning to realize was both his prison and his protection. At 8:00 p.m., the gala officially began. Caroline Ashworth took the stage to thunderous applause. She was wearing a midnight blue Valentino gown that probably cost more than his mother's surgery. Her 10-carat engagement ring caught the chandelier light like a weapon. "Welcome, dear friends, to the Sterling Foundation's annual charity gala." The crowd cheered. "Tonight we celebrate generosity, compassion, the belief that those of us who have been blessed with abundance have a responsibility to lift up those less fortunate." Marcus almost laughed. This was the same woman whose pharmaceutical company had raised insulin prices by 340% last year. The same woman whose charitable foundation spent more on galas than actual charity. But the crowd ate it up, ate it. They always did. "Now," Caroline continued, "before we begin our program, I'd like to share something that troubled me this morning." The room quieted. "It seems one of our service staff was discovered examining our priceless Steinway grand piano. Not cleaning it. Examining it. As if someone of his background could possibly understand such artistry." Marcus's blood went cold. No. She couldn't mean, "Marcus Thompson, would you join us, please?" 200 heads turned toward the coat check station. 200 pairs of eyes locked onto him like heat-seeking missiles. Marcus didn't move. Couldn't move. "Don't be shy," Caroline said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Come up here. I'd like to offer you an opportunity." The crowd began to murmur. Some laughed. Others whispered behind manicured hands. A security guard appeared at Marcus's elbow. "Sir, Mrs. Ashworth is requesting your presence." "I didn't do anything wrong." "Sir, please." Marcus straightened his uniform and began the longest walk of his life. The crowd parted before him, like the Red Sea, if the Red Sea had been filled with sharks wearing Rolex watches. He could feel their judgment, their amusement, their absolute certainty that he didn't belong. Caroline watched his approach with a smile that could have frozen champagne. "There he is," she announced. "Our aspiring concert pianist." The crowd laughed. Marcus stopped 10 feet from the stage, his hands clasped behind his back to hide their trembling. "This morning," Caroline continued, "security found this gentleman standing at our piano, touching the keys, as if someone in a janitor's uniform could possibly appreciate a $200,000 instrument." More laughter. "But I believe in giving everyone a chance. Don't you agree?" The crowd applauded. Caroline descended from the stage, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown to execution. She circled Marcus, slowly examining him the way one might examine a stray dog that had wandered into a garden party. "Tell me, Marcus, do you even know what piece is on that music stand?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Chopin, Ballade No. 1 in G minor." Caroline's eyebrows rose slightly. "He reads—" The crowd roared with laughter. "Well then." Caroline reached up and removed her engagement ring. Slowly, deliberately, letting the chandelier light catch every facet. She walked to the piano and placed the ring on the music stand next to the Chopin. "Here's my offer, Marcus. Play this piece, play it correctly, and I'll marry you on the spot." The ballroom exploded with delighted gasps and applause. "Caroline, you're savage," someone shouted. "This is incredible," another voice called. "Get your phone out, this is going viral." Marcus stood frozen at the center of 200 predatory gazes. Every phone in the room was pointed at him. Every eye was hungry for his humiliation. This was what she wanted. Not a performance. A spectacle. A public execution of his dignity that would remind everyone exactly where people like him belonged. "Of course," Carolyn added, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "When you inevitably fail, I trust you'll understand that some spaces simply aren't meant for people like you." She smiled. "So, what do you say? Do we have a groom? Or do we have a janitor who knows his place?" Marcus's mind raced. If he walked away, she won. He would be the coward who confirmed every stereotype. The video would go viral, and he would become a symbol of people who didn't know their place, trying to reach above their station. If he tried and failed, she won. He would be the delusional janitor who thought he could play classical music. The humiliation would follow him forever. Either way, she won. Unless... Well, Caroline tapped her diamond bracelet impatiently. "We're all waiting." Marcus looked at the piano, at the Chopin on the music stand, at the ring glittering like a trap baited with gold. He thought about his mother in that hospital bed fighting for every breath. He thought about destiny at Columbia, dreaming of a future he had sacrificed everything to give her. He thought about his father's last words. "Promise me you'll take care of them." "I promise, Dad." "And don't let the music die, son. Don't let it die." But he had let it die. For 7 years he had let it die, had buried it under bills and responsibilities and the crushing weight of survival. What if tonight was the resurrection, Marcus? He blinked. A familiar voice cutting through the crowd's murmurs. Jerome Williams, the security guard from Lincoln Center, who had been unlocking Practice Room C for him every Tuesday and Thursday night. Jerome had pushed through the crowd and was standing near the stage, his weathered face creased with concern. "Marcus, don't do this. Walk away. It's not worth it." "Listen to your friend," Caroline said sweetly. "Some people are meant to play pianos. Others are meant to clean them." The crowd laughed again. But Marcus wasn't listening to the laughter anymore. He was listening to something else. Something deeper. A voice from 20 years ago when he was 9 years old and sitting on his grandfather's lap. Samuel Thompson had been a jazz pianist in Harlem before Jim Crow made music a luxury black men couldn't afford. He'd played at the Cotton Club, the Apollo, the legendary venues where giants made history. Then the world changed, and he spent the rest of his life working construction alongside his son. But every night after dinner, Samuel would sit Marcus on his lap at the battered upright piano in their Brooklyn apartment. "Listen to me, boy," Samuel would say, his fingers moving across the keys like water over stones. "They can take your job. They can take your money. They can take everything you got in this world. but they can't take what God put in your fingers and your heart. You understand me? They can't take your gift. Yes, Grandpa. Now you play. Play like your life depends on it. Because one day it will. Marcus had played. Every day, for 15 years he had played. Through poverty and struggle, and his grandfather's death. Through his father's long hours, and his mother's illness. Through high school, and Howard, and that glorious scholarship to Juilliard. Then the scaffolding collapsed, and he stopped playing. But the music never stopped. It was always there, waiting in his fingers, sleeping in his heart, dreaming in the silence between heartbeats. Maybe it was time to wake it up. Marcus looked at Caroline Ashworth, at her cold blue eyes and her cruel smile, and her absolute certainty that he was nothing. "I accept," he said. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. Caroline's smile flickered, just for an instant. "I'm sorry. I accept your proposal, Mrs. Ashworth." Marcus's voice carried across the ballroom with a strength that surprised even him. "But when I'm done, I expect you to honor it." The crowd stirred. This wasn't the cowering they had expected. Caroline recovered quickly. "How delightful! We have ourselves a contest." She stepped aside with a theatrical flourish, gesturing toward the piano. "The stage is yours, darling. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly." Marcus didn't respond. He was already walking toward the Steinway. Each step felt like a mile. Each breath felt like a symphony. The crowd pressed closer, phones raised hungry for content. He reached the piano and stopped. $200,000 of precision engineering. Ebony and ivory and brass and wood crafted by masters into an instrument worthy of concert halls. He had dreamed of playing a piano like this. In those midnight sessions at Lincoln Center, hunched over a beaten upright with 3 broken keys, he had imagined what it would feel like to touch something truly magnificent. Now he was about to find out. Marcus sat on the bench, adjusted its height, placed his feet on the pedals. The crowd fell silent. Caroline stood beside the piano arms, crossed smile, sharp as a blade. "Whenever you're ready, darling. We don't have all night." Marcus looked at the Chopin on the music stand. He didn't need it. He had memorized this piece 15 years ago when he was 14 and his grandfather was still alive. He closed his eyes, and in the darkness behind his eyelids, he heard his grandfather's voice. "Play like your life depends on it, because one day it will." Today was that day. Marcus placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The first notes emerged like whispers, soft, tentative, almost inaudible. But there was something in those whispers, a quality that made the crowd lean forward, a precision that made Caroline's smile waver. The opening measures of Chopin's Ballade unfolded like a flower in slow motion, each note perfectly placed, each phrase breathing with an emotion that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than the strings. Marcus's left hand joined, adding bass notes that vibrated through the ballroom's marble foundation. The crowd's murmurs died. Someone whispered, "Is he actually—" By measure 8, Marcus's posture had transformed. The hunched shoulders of a janitor had disappeared. In their place was the regal spine of a concert pianist, the floating wrists, the relaxed power that came from 10,000 hours of practice. The melody opened into its first full statement, and Marcus played it with a tenderness that brought tears to the eyes of those who understood what they were hearing. This was not a janitor pretending to play piano. This was an artist returning from exile. The crowd began to stir, bodies that had positioned themselves for mockery now leaned forward in genuine interest. Phones that had been ready to capture humiliation were now recording something else entirely. "My God," someone whispered. "He's actually good." Good, no. Good was an insult. This was transcendence. The transition to the B section arrived like thunder wrapped in silk. Marcus's technique exploded into view. Octaves ringing like cathedral bells. Arpeggios cascading like waterfalls. chromatic runs so fast they blurred into pure emotion. His hands moved across the keyboard with surgical precision, while his face reflected every emotional nuance of the music. Tenderness, fury, longing, joy. The Steinway sang beneath his touch like an instrument possessed. Count Alessandro Romano, an Italian nobleman who had collected rare instruments for 60 years, stood up involuntarily. "Maria," he whispered to his wife, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "This is what we heard at La Scala in 1987. This is that level of mastery." Caroline Ashworth's smile had vanished completely. Her face cycled through emotions like a slot machine searching for something to land on. Shock, disbelief, fear. This wasn't possible. Janitors didn't play like this. Working-class black men from Brooklyn didn't possess this kind of cultural sophistication. Everything she believed about breeding and education and natural superiority was crumbling with each perfectly executed phrase. Marcus reached the development section and took risks that only masters attempt, slowing certain passages to extract maximum emotional impact, accelerating through technical fireworks that would challenge conservatory professors. He wasn't just playing the notes. He was inhabiting them, becoming them, channeling Chopin's genius through fingers that had spent 7 years pushing mop buckets. The cadenza arrived. This was the section that separated amateurs from professionals, the section that made even trained pianists hold their breath. Marcus's hands separated into independent voices. His left maintained thundering bass octaves, while his right exploded into cascading runs that defied physical possibility. His fingers moved so fast they blurred, yet every note rang crystal clear. The crowd gasped audibly. "Jesus Christ," someone breathed. "This is impossible." But it wasn't impossible. It was happening, right here, right now, in front of 200 witnesses who had expected a humiliation and were receiving a revelation instead. Marcus played the final statement of the main theme with power that seemed to shake the chandeliers. Bass notes thundered through the foundation. Melody soared toward the vaulted ceiling. He wasn't just executing Chopin's vision anymore. He was channeling 7 years of suppressed dreams, a lifetime of invisibility, generations of ancestors whose talents had been buried beneath survival. The final chord rang out like a declaration of war. Marcus held the sustain pedal, letting the harmonies decay naturally into silence. Complete silence. Absolute silence. For 4.5 seconds, 200 of Manhattan's most powerful people sat frozen. Their assumptions shattered, their certainties demolished. Then the room exploded. Count Romano was the first to his feet, his weathered hands thundering together. "Bravo!" he shouted, tears streaming. "Magnifico! Absolutely magnifico!" The standing ovations spread like wildfire. 200 people leaping to their feet. Champagne glasses abandoned, phones forgotten. Every preconception about class and worth and human potential shattering like crystal on marble. "Who is this man?" someone screamed. "Get him a recording contract," another voice demanded. "Carnegie Hall, he belongs at Carnegie Hall." Jerome Williams pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down his face. "I told you, Danny, I told you those hands weren't made for mops." The applause continued, growing stronger instead of fading. Manhattan's elite were not just clapping. They were bearing witness to something that transcended entertainment. They had come to watch a poor black man humiliate himself. They had stayed to watch him resurrect. Marcus stood slowly from the piano bench. His work uniform, which had marked him as invisible, now seemed like a symbol of triumph. The janitor who had cleaned their floors had just outperformed every pianist at their precious club. He turned to face Caroline Ashworth. She stood frozen beside the piano, her face drained of color. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. The woman who had built an empire on cruelty and confidence had been rendered speechless by a janitor's dignity. "Mrs. Ashworth," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the thunderous applause, "I believe you have a wedding to plan." He gestured toward the engagement ring still perched on the music stand. Should I clear my calendar? The ballroom erupted in delighted laughter and renewed cheers. Someone whistled. Another voice shouted, "She asked for it." Caroline's face flushed crimson. Her hands trembled. Her carefully constructed world was crashing down around her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Marcus reached for his work gloves, which he had placed beside the bench. With deliberate precision, he set them down next to her engagement ring. Calloused protection beside pampered luxury. Survival beside privilege. Truth beside pretense. "The pleasure," he said softly, "was all mine." He began walking toward the service exit. The crowd parted before him now, not in mockery, but in respect. Hands reached out to touch his shoulders. Business cards were pressed into his palms. Voices offered contracts and concerts and opportunities that would have seemed like fantasy 12 hours ago. But Marcus wasn't thinking about contracts. He was thinking about his mother watching from her hospital bed, seeing her son finally become the man she always knew he could be. He was thinking about destiny screaming with joy somewhere in Brooklyn, realizing that dreams weren't just for other people. He was thinking about his father looking down from heaven, finally seeing the promise fulfilled. At the service exit, Marcus paused and looked back. Caroline Ashworth stood alone beside the Steinway, surrounded by guests who suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. Her publicist was fielding panicked calls. Her CFO was calculating damage. Her empire, built on the assumption that some people were simply better than others, was beginning to crack. The hashtag #JanitorGenius was already trending worldwide. Marcus pushed through the service door and stepped into the cool Manhattan night. Above him, the city's towers glittered like diamonds, scattered across black velvet. The same towers that had always seemed like monuments to a world he could never enter. But something had changed. He had changed. For 7 years, Marcus Thompson had been invisible, had convinced himself that survival was enough, that dreams were luxuries, that some spaces weren't meant for people like him. Tonight, he had discovered the truth. Excellence doesn't need permission. Dignity can't be stolen by those who never possessed it. And music once awakened can never be silenced again. His phone buzzed. Text from Destiny. "Marcus, what the hell? You're all over the internet. Mom is crying. I'm crying. Everyone is crying. Call me right now." Marcus smiled for the first time in longer than he could remember. Then his phone buzzed again. An unknown number. He answered. "Hello, Mr. Thompson." A woman's voice, professional and urgent. "This is Dr. Patricia Wells from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm calling about your mother, Grace Thompson." Marcus's smile vanished. "What's wrong? Is she okay?" "She's stable, Mr. Thompson. But something remarkable has happened. An anonymous donor just wired $45,000 to cover her surgery completely. We can operate tomorrow morning if you consent." Marcus stopped walking. $45,000, the exact amount they needed. Anonymous donor. His mind raced. Who could? "Mr. Thompson, are you there?" "Yes," Marcus breathed. "Yes, I'm here. I consent. I absolutely consent." "Wonderful. We'll need you here by 6 a.m. to sign paperwork. And Mr. Thompson?" "Yes. Whoever you are to that donor, you must be very loved. This kind of generosity is rare." The call ended. Marcus stood on the Manhattan sidewalk surrounded by people who didn't see him and wept. $45,000, his mother's life, donated by someone who had watched him play and understood that some debts could never be calculated in money. Somewhere behind him in that ballroom full of wealth and cruelty and shattered assumptions, one person had been moved enough to save a stranger's mother. Marcus looked up at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered. "Thank you, Grandpa. I didn't let it die. The music's awake now." He started walking toward the subway station. Tomorrow, his mother would have her surgery. Friday, he would record Destiny's composition for Columbia. And someday soon, the world would learn the name Marcus Thompson. Not as a janitor, not as an invisible man, but as the pianist who played like Mozart and brought a billionaire to her knees. The resurrection had only just begun. The subway at 11:47 p.m. carried Marcus Thompson toward Brooklyn like a vessel carrying a man reborn. His phone had not stopped buzzing since he left the Meridian Club. Notifications flooded his screen faster than he could read them. Twitter mentions, Instagram tags, Facebook friend requests from strangers, news outlets asking for interviews. Hashtag janitor genius had exploded across every platform. But Marcus ignored all of it. His eyes were fixed on one text message from Destiny. Mom saw everything. She's asking for you. Please hurry. The train couldn't move fast enough. At 12:23 a.m., Marcus burst through the doors of Mount Sinai Hospital. He ran past the reception desk, past the security guard who shouted after him, past the elevator that was taking too long. He took the stairs 3 at a time. Room 412, his mother's room. He pushed through the door and stopped. Grace Thompson was sitting up in her hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. The television mounted on the wall was paused on an image of Marcus at the piano, his hands frozen above the keys. "Baby," she whispered. "My baby." Marcus crossed the room in 3 steps and fell into her arms. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just held each other while 7 years of sacrifice and silence finally found release. "I saw you," Grace said, her voice breaking. "I saw my son, the son I always knew you were. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I stopped playing. I'm sorry I—" "Hush." Grace pulled back and cupped his face in her trembling hands. "You did what you had to do. You took care of us. You kept your promise to your father. But the music never left you, baby. It was just sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up." She smiled through her tears. "And Lord, did it wake up tonight?" Marcus laughed, a sound that surprised him. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed. "Mama, there's something else. The surgery. Someone paid for it, all of it." Grace nodded slowly. "The doctor told me. Anonymous donor," she said. "Do you know who it was? Does it matter?" Grace squeezed his hands. "God works through people, Marcus. Sometimes the hands that lift us up don't need to be named. They just need to be thanked." The door opened behind them. Destiny rushed in, still wearing her Columbia sweatshirt, her face wet with tears. She launched herself at Marcus with such force that he stumbled backward. "You absolute idiot!" she screamed into his chest. "You beautiful, stupid, amazing idiot! Why didn't you tell me you could still play like that?" "I wasn't sure I could," Marcus admitted. Not sure. Destiny pulled back and punched his shoulder. "Marcus, you just went viral. You have 3 million views already. 3 million people are calling you the next Lang Lang." "I don't even know who that is." "He's only one of the most famous pianists in the world, and they're comparing you to him." Grace laughed weakly from her bed. "Destiny, let your brother breathe. He's had quite a night." Destiny grabbed Marcus's phone from his hand and started scrolling. "Look at this. CNN wants an interview. So does Good Morning America. And this—" She stopped, her eyes widening. Marcus, look at this." She held up the phone. An email from the Juilliard School of Music. Subject line, "Regarding your original scholarship offer." Marcus's heart stopped. "Open it," Destiny whispered. His fingers trembled as he tapped the screen. "Dear Mr. Thompson, we have become aware of your extraordinary performance at this evening's Sterling Foundation Gala. After reviewing the footage, our faculty unanimously agrees that the scholarship offer extended to you 7 years ago remains valid. We would be honored if you would consider completing your studies at Juilliard. Additionally, we would like to invite you to perform at our upcoming winter showcase as a featured soloist. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Dr. Robert Chendine of Admissions. Marcus read it 3 times. Then he read it again. Baby? Grace's voice was soft. What does it say? Marcus looked up at his mother, at the woman who had watched him sacrifice everything for 7 years without a single complaint, at the woman who had never stopped believing even when he had stopped believing in himself. They want me back, Mama. Juilliard wants me back. The sound that came from Grace Thompson was somewhere between a sob and a hallelujah. She raised her hands toward the ceiling and began to pray, thanking God for miracles and music and sons who never truly gave up. Destiny was already typing on her phone. I'm posting this. I'm posting all of this. The world needs to know. Destiny, wait. No, no more waiting, Marcus. No more hiding. You spent 7 years being invisible for us. Now it's your turn to be seen. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to retreat back into the comfortable shadows where expectations were low and disappointment was impossible. But he looked at his mother's face radiant with joy, despite the tubes and monitors. He looked at his sister's face fierce with pride and determination. And he realized that invisibility had never been protection. It had been prison. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. The hospital room erupted in celebration. At 2:15 a.m., Marcus finally left the hospital. His mother needed rest before tomorrow's surgery, and Destiny had classes in the morning. But as he walked toward the subway station, a black Mercedes pulled up beside him. The window rolled down. Mr. Thompson? Marcus stopped. He recognized the face behind the wheel. James Morrison, Caroline Ashworth's CFO, the man who had been scrolling through pharmaceutical stock reports while his boss humiliated a janitor. Get in, James said. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to anyone from Ashworth Pharmaceuticals. This isn't about Caroline. This is about you. James's expression was unreadable. Please, 5 minutes. Then I'll drive you anywhere you want to go. Marcus hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away, but something in James's tone suggested this was important. He got in the car. James pulled away from the curb and drove in silence for a full minute before speaking. I was the anonymous donor. Marcus turned sharply. What? Your mother's surgery. I paid for it. James kept his eyes on the road. $45,000. Wired it the moment you finished playing. Why? James was quiet for a long moment. Because I used to be you. Marcus said nothing. 30 years ago, I was a kid from the Bronx with a gift for numbers, scholarship to Wharton, big dreams, bigger obstacles. James's jaw tightened. I made it. But I made it by becoming someone I hate. By working for people like Caroline Ashworth. By pretending that money matters more than humanity. He pulled the car to the side of the road and finally looked at Marcus. Tonight I watched you do something I've never had the courage to do. You stood up. You played. You reminded 200 people that excellence doesn't come with a dress code. James's voice cracked slightly. You reminded me who I used to be, before I sold my soul for a corner office. Marcus didn't know what to say. The donation was anonymous because I didn't want Caroline to know. She would have blocked it. Probably would have fired me. James almost smiled. Actually, she definitely would have fired me, which is why I'm resigning tomorrow morning. You're quitting. I'm done. 20 years of helping that woman crush people like you, like me, like whoever we needed to crush to hit quarterly targets. He shook his head. No more. Your mother's surgery was my resignation letter, the only good thing I've done in 2 decades. Marcus sat in silence, processing everything. There's something else, James said. Caroline isn't going to let this go. What happened tonight humiliated her in front of everyone who matters. She's going to come after you. Come after me how? I don't know yet, but I know her. She's vindictive, petty, and she has resources you can't imagine. James reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. This is my personal number. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me. I have enough dirt on Carolyn Ashworth to bury her. I just never had a reason to use it. Marcus took the card. Why are you helping me? James started the car again. Because maybe if I help you, I can start becoming the person I was supposed to be. He drove Marcus home in silence. At 3:47 a.m., Marcus climbed the stairs to his family's small apartment in Bedford-Stuyvesant. The building was quiet. The hallway smelled like old cooking and older dreams. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was dark, but someone was sitting at the kitchen table. Marcus's hand found the light switch. Jerome Williams looked up at him with tired eyes. Jerome, what are you doing here? How did you even— Destiny let me in. Told me you'd be home eventually. Jerome gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down, Marcus. We need to talk. Marcus sat. Jerome was silent for a long moment, his weathered hands folded on the table. He looked older than Marcus had ever seen him. I watched the videos, Jerome finally said. All of them. Every angle. Every reaction. He shook his head slowly. In 40 years of listening to music, I have never heard anything like what you did tonight. Jerome, let me finish. Jerome's voice was firm. I've been protecting you for 6 months, unlocking that practice room, looking the other way when you stayed past midnight, telling security to leave you alone. He paused. But I never understood. Not really. I thought you were good, maybe even great. But tonight? His voice trailed off. Tonight what? Jerome looked at Marcus with something approaching reverence. Tonight I realized I've been watching a genius hide in a janitor's uniform, and I've been helping him hide. His jaw tightened. That ends now. What do you mean? Jerome reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He slid it across the table. What's this? Open it. Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $25,000. Made out to him. Jerome, I can't accept this. You don't have a choice. Jerome's tone left no room for argument. That money is every penny I've saved in 30 years, and I'm giving it to you because I believe in what you can become. But your retirement? My retirement was going to be spent sitting in a small apartment watching TV and waiting to die. Jerome's eyes glistened. This is better. This is investing in something that matters. Marcus stared at the check. $25,000. More money than he'd ever held in his hands. I'm also calling in some favors, Jerome continued. I know people in the music industry, people who owe me. He leaned forward. By this time next week, you're going to have offers from every major concert hall in New York. I guarantee it. Jerome, I don't know what to say. Say you'll make it count. Jerome stood and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Say you'll stop hiding. Say you'll become the pianist your grandfather always knew you could be. Marcus thought about Samuel Thompson, about those nights on his grandfather's lap learning scales by lamplight, about the promise he'd made to a dying man. I'll make it count, he said. I promise. Jerome nodded once, then walked toward the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing. That woman who humiliated you tonight. Caroline Ashworth. What about her? Jerome's expression hardened. She's been trying to buy Lincoln Center for 2 years. Wants to rename it the Ashworth Center for the Performing Arts. The board has been resisting, but she has a lot of money and a lot of influence. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Why are you telling me this? Because if she succeeds, the first thing she'll do is ban anyone she considers unworthy from stepping foot inside. People like you. People like me. Jerome opened the door. Tonight wasn't just about music, Marcus. It was about power. And Caroline Ashworth doesn't lose, not ever. The door closed behind him. Marcus sat alone in the dark kitchen, Jerome's check in one hand, James Morrison's business card in the other. Two men who believed in him. Two warnings about the same woman. The resurrection had begun. But the war was just starting. At 6:00 a.m., Marcus was back at Mount Sinai Hospital. The surgery was scheduled for 8:00 a.m. 2 hours of waiting that felt like 2 years. Destiny sat beside him in the surgical waiting room, her leg bouncing with nervous energy. She's going to be fine. Marcus said as much to himself as to her. I know. Destiny's voice was small. I can't lose her, Marcus. Not after Dad. I can't. Marcus put his arm around his sister and pulled her close. We're not going to lose her. She's the strongest woman I've ever known. And she's got the best doctors. And she's got us. Destiny nodded against his shoulder. They sat in silence, watching the clock crawl forward. At 7:45 a.m., Dr. Patricia Wells appeared in the waiting room. Marcus and Destiny jumped to their feet. Is everything okay? Is something wrong? Dr. Wells smiled. Everything is fine. Your mother is prepped and ready. The surgery should take approximately 4 hours. I wanted to give you a chance to see her before we begin. They followed the doctor down a long corridor to a pre-op room. Grace Thompson lay on a gurney, already in a hospital gown and IV dripping into her arm. She looked smaller than Marcus had ever seen her. Fragile. Mortal. But when she saw her children, her face lit up like sunrise. There are my babies. Marcus took her hand. It felt like holding a bird. We're right here, Mama. We're not going anywhere. I know, baby, I know. Grace looked at Destiny, then back at Marcus. I need you both to promise me something. Anything. If something happens. Mama, don't. Hush. Listen to me. Grace's grip tightened. If something happens, I need you to promise that you'll keep living, keep playing, keep dreaming. Don't let my dying turn you back into ghosts. Tears streamed down Marcus's face. Nothing's going to happen. Promise me. I promise, Mama. Destiny. I promise. Destiny whispered. Grace smiled. Good. Now let me tell you something. She reached up and touched Marcus's face. What you did last night was the proudest moment of my life. Prouder than the day you were born. Prouder than anything. Mama, your father is watching. Your grandfather is watching. And they are so proud of the man you've become. Her eyes were bright with tears and faith. You spent 7 years taking care of us. Now it's time to take care of yourself. You hear me? It's your turn now. Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded. Dr. Wells appeared in the doorway. It's time. Grace squeezed both their hands one last time. I love you. Both of you. More than music. More than life. We love you too, Mama. They watched as the orderlies wheeled Grace Thompson toward the operating room. She kept her eyes on them until the doors swung shut and she disappeared. The next 4 hours were the longest of Marcus's life. He and Destiny sat in the waiting room barely speaking. Every time a doctor walked by, they both tensed. Every announcement over the intercom made their hearts stop. Marcus tried to distract himself by checking his phone. The notifications had only increased overnight. His follower count on social media had exploded from 0 to over 2 million. Major news outlets were running stories about the janitor pianist who silenced a billionaire. But he couldn't focus on any of it, not while his mother's life hung in the balance behind those operating room doors. At 11:52 a.m., Dr. Wells appeared. Her face was unreadable. Marcus and Destiny stood holding hands so tightly, their knuckles turned white. The surgery was successful, Dr. Wells said. The world tilted. She's going to need significant recovery time, the doctor continued. But the transplant was textbook. Her new kidney is functioning perfectly. Barring complications, she should make a full recovery. Destiny collapsed against Marcus, sobbing with relief. Marcus couldn't cry, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything except stand there and let the miracle wash over him. His mother was going to live. "Can we see her?" he finally managed. "She's in recovery now. Probably another 2 hours before she's conscious enough for visitors." Dr. Wells smiled. "But she's going to be fine, Mr. Thompson. Your mother is a fighter." The doctor walked away. Marcus and Destiny held each other in the middle of that sterile waiting room, laughing and crying and thanking God for answered prayers. They didn't notice the woman watching them from across the room. They didn't see the phone in her hand recording everything. They didn't recognize Rebecca Park, Caroline Ashworth's publicist, gathering intelligence for her employer's next move. The first battle had been won, but Caroline Ashworth was just getting started. At 2:30 p.m., Grace Thompson opened her eyes. Marcus and Destiny were at her bedside instantly. "Mama? Mama, can you hear us?" Grace's eyes focused slowly. A weak smile crossed her face. "Did I make it?" Marcus laughed through his tears. "You made it, Mama. Surgery was perfect. The doctor says you're going to be fine." "Praise God." Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "Praise God." She drifted back into sleep, but her hand never let go of Marcus's. He sat there for hours, watching her breathe, watching her live. At 5:00 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered quietly, stepping into the hallway. "Hello. Mr. Thompson, this is Thomas Berkowitz, Artistic Director of Lincoln Center." Marcus's heart rate spiked. "Yes, sir. I'll get straight to the point. What you did last night was extraordinary. I've been in this business for 30 years, and I have never seen anything like it." "Thank you, sir. I want to offer you a position. Principal pianist in residence at Lincoln Center. Salary commensurate with your talent. Full benefits. Creative control over your performance schedule." Marcus leaned against the hospital wall, struggling to process what he was hearing. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Berkowitz's voice was warm. "Say yes, and let's make history together." "Can I have some time to think about it?" "Of course. But don't take too long. Other institutions are circling. I'd hate to lose you to Carnegie Hall." A pause. "There's one more thing you should know." "What's that?" "Caroline Ashworth has been trying to acquire controlling interest in Lincoln Center for 2 years. If she succeeds, she'll have the power to cancel your contract before it begins." Berkowitz's tone hardened. "I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what you're walking into. This isn't just about music anymore. It's about who gets to decide what music matters and who gets to play it." Marcus thought about Jerome's warning, about James Morrison's warning. "I understand," he said. "Good. Call me within 48 hours. The line went dead. Marcus stood in the hospital hallway, his mind spinning. 12 hours ago, he had been a janitor. An invisible man pushing a mop through rooms full of people who looked past him. Now, he had a scholarship offer from Juilliard, a job offer from Lincoln Center, and apparently a billion-dollar enemy who was just getting started. His phone buzzed again, text from an unknown number. He opened it. A single photograph. Him and Destiny embracing in the hospital waiting room this morning, taken from across the room without their knowledge. Beneath it, a message. "Enjoy the moment, Mr. Thompson. It won't last. C.A." Marcus stared at the screen. Caroline Ashworth. She knew where he was, knew about his mother's surgery, had someone watching him. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in the chair beside his mother's hospital bed, watching her breathe, watching the monitors blink their steady rhythms, watching the door every time footsteps passed in the hallway. Caroline Ashworth's message burned in his mind like acid. "Enjoy the moment, Mr. Thompson. It won't last." She had someone watching him, photographing him, tracking his movements, and she wanted him to know it. At 3:17 a.m., his phone buzzed again. James Morrison. "We need to meet tomorrow. 9 a.m. Coffee shop on 57th and Lexington. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. Marcus typed back, "What's happening?" James. "Caroline is moving faster than I expected. I have information you need to see." Marcus stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, "I'll be there." He put his phone away and looked at his mother's sleeping face. Whatever was coming, he would face it. For her. For Destiny. For everyone who had ever been crushed beneath Caroline Ashworth's designer heels. At 6:00 a.m., Grace woke up. Her eyes were clearer than yesterday, her voice stronger. "You've been here all night," she said. "I can tell. You look terrible." Marcus laughed despite himself. "Thanks, Mama. Go home, shower, eat something that isn't from a vending machine." Grace reached for his hand. "I'm not going anywhere, baby. The hard part is over." "Are you sure?" Marcus Anthony Thompson. She used his full name the way she always did when she meant business. "I survived surgery. I survived your father's death. I survived watching my son work himself half to death for 7 years." Her eyes softened. "I can survive a few hours without you hovering." Marcus kissed her forehead. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too. Now go." He went. At 8:47 a.m., Marcus walked into the coffee shop on 57th and Lexington. James Morrison was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a laptop open in front of him. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His usually immaculate suit was wrinkled. His tie was loosened. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Marcus slid into the booth across from him. "What's going on?" James looked around the coffee shop, making sure no one was within earshot. "I resigned this morning, effective immediately." "How did Caroline take it?" "She threw a crystal vase at my head." James almost smiled. "Missed by about 3 inches. Then she called security and had me escorted out like a criminal." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was the most liberating moment of my life." James turned the laptop around to face Marcus. "But before security could confiscate my computer, I downloaded everything. 20 years of files, emails, financial records, board meeting minutes." He paused. "Evidence." Marcus looked at the screen. Folders upon folders of documents. "Evidence of what?" "Everything." James's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Price fixing on insulin. Bribing FDA officials to fast-track dangerous drugs. Covering up clinical trial deaths. Funneling money to politicians who blocked Medicare negotiations." He shook his head. "Caroline Ashworth isn't just cruel, Marcus. She's a criminal, and I helped her for 20 years. Marcus felt his stomach turn. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's coming after you. And I want you to be able to fight back." "Coming after me, how?" James reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. He slid it across the table. "Open it." Marcus opened the folder. Inside was a stack of photographs. Him mopping floors at the Meridian Club. Him taking out trash. Him scrubbing toilets. Dozens of images, all taken without his knowledge over what appeared to be months. "She's been watching you since March," James said. "When she found out you were working at the club, she had her people document everything. She was building a file." "A file for what?" "I don't know yet, but Caroline never collects information without a purpose." James leaned forward. "There's more. Yesterday, after your performance went viral, she called an emergency board meeting. I wasn't invited, but I have sources." "What happened?" "She's planning something called Operation Restoration. That's all I know. The name and the fact that you're the target." Marcus looked at the photographs of himself. A janitor doing janitor work. Nothing shameful. Nothing wrong. But in Caroline Ashworth's hands, anything could become a weapon. "What should I do?" James closed the laptop. "Right now, nothing. Go to Juilliard. Accept the Lincoln Center position. Keep building your career. Let the world fall in love with your music. And then? And then when she makes her move, we'll be ready." James slid a USB drive across the table. Everything on my laptop is on this drive. Guard it with your life. It's the only leverage we have." Marcus took the drive and slipped it into his pocket. "Why are you risking everything for me?" he asked. "You could go to prison for stealing company files. You could lose everything." James was quiet for a long moment. "Because I have a son," he finally said. "He's 12 years old, and he asked me last night if I was proud of what I do for a living." His voice cracked. I couldn't answer him. I couldn't look my own child in the eye and tell him I was proud. He stood up from the booth. "Maybe helping you is how I become someone my son can be proud of. Maybe it's too late for redemption, but I have to try." James Morrison walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. Marcus sat alone in the booth, the USB drive burning a hole in his pocket. The war had officially begun. At 11:00 a.m., Marcus arrived at the Juilliard School of Music. The building rose before him like a cathedral dedicated to everything he had sacrificed. He had walked past it 1,000 times in the past 7 years, never allowing himself to look too long, never allowing himself to imagine what might have been. Now he was walking through the front doors. Dr. Robert Chen, the Dean of Admissions, met him in the lobby. "Mr. Thompson." Dr. Chen extended his hand with a warm smile. "I cannot tell you how pleased we are to finally meet you. Your reputation precedes you." "My reputation is about 12 hours old," Marcus said. Dr. Chen laughed. "Perhaps your viral reputation, but your musical reputation has been alive in these halls for 7 years. Professor Williams spoke of you often before he retired, called you the most gifted student he never got to teach." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Professor Williams, the man who had written his recommendation letter, the man who had fought for his scholarship. He remembered me. Remembered you. He kept your audition tape in his office until the day he left, played it for every incoming class as an example of raw, God-given talent. Dr. Chen gestured toward the hallway. "Would you like to see the practice rooms? I believe you'll find our facilities somewhat improved since your original acceptance." They walked through corridors lined with photographs of legendary musicians. Marcus recognized some of the faces from his grandfather's record collection. Others were contemporary stars he had only read about. His face could hang here someday. The thought was almost too much to process. They reached a door at the end of a long hallway. "This is our concert practice room," Dr. Chen said. "The finest acoustic space in any conservatory in North America." He opened the door. Inside was a Steinway Model D concert grand, the same model as the piano at the Meridian Club, the same model used at Carnegie Hall. Marcus approached it slowly, reverently. "Would you like to play?" Dr. Chen asked. Marcus looked at him. "Right now? Why not?" "Consider it an informal audition. Not that you need one, of course. Your performance last night was audition enough." Dr. Chen smiled. "But I admit I would very much like to hear you play in person." Marcus sat at the bench. The keys were cool beneath his fingers. The action was perfect. The instrument seemed to breathe with anticipation. He began to play. Not Chopin this time. Something different. Something personal. The opening notes of The Scaffold, Destiny's composition, the piece she had written for their father, the piece Marcus had promised to record for her Columbia application. He had received the sheet music 2 days ago, had stayed up until 3 a.m. learning it, had practiced it during his midnight sessions at Lincoln Center until every note was burned into his muscle memory. Now he played it for the first time on an instrument worthy of its beauty. The composition began with a single note repeated. Steady, relentless, like a heartbeat, like a hammer striking a nail, like footsteps climbing a scaffold toward either creation or destruction. Then the melody entered. Tender and broken. A son watching his father work. A father dreaming of a son's future. 2 generations connected by sacrifice and love. The piece built slowly, adding layers of harmony that intertwined like vines growing around a construction scaffold. Major chords collapsed into minor. Hope wrestled with despair. And through it all, that steady pulse continued, never stopping, never resting. The climax came suddenly explosively, a cascade of notes that sounded like falling, like impact, like the moment everything changed. Then silence, a single chord suspended, and finally, resolution. Not happiness exactly, not sadness, something deeper. Acceptance. Grace. The understanding that sacrifice and loss are sometimes the price of love. Marcus held the final note until it faded into nothing. When he looked up, Dr. Chen was crying. That was... The dean wiped his eyes, struggling for words. That was not Chopin. No, sir. It was my sister's composition. She wrote it for our father. It's extraordinary. Dr. Chen took a shaky breath. Mr. Thompson, I have been in music education for 40 years. I have heard thousands of pianists, hundreds of prodigies, dozens of genuine talents. He paused. I can count on one hand the number who made me weep. You just joined that list. Marcus didn't know how to respond. Dr. Chen composed himself and extended his hand again. Welcome to Juilliard, Mr. Thompson. We are honored to have you. At 2:30 p.m., Marcus stood outside Lincoln Center. The building complex sprawled before him like a monument to everything music could be. He had cleaned these floors for 2 years, had mopped these hallways at midnight while dreaming of standing on those stages. Now Thomas Berkowitz wanted him to do exactly that. He walked through the main entrance and approached the reception desk. I'm here to see Mr. Berkowitz, Marcus Thompson. The receptionist's eyes widened with recognition. Mr. Thompson? Of course he's been expecting you. Please follow me. She led him through corridors he knew intimately from a completely different perspective. Past practice rooms where he had played in secret. Past performance halls where he had dreamed of playing publicly. Past the security station where Jerome Williams had watched over him like a guardian angel. Jerome wasn't there today. His shift didn't start until 6 p.m., but Marcus would see him soon, would thank him properly for everything. The receptionist stopped at a door marked Artistic Director and knocked. Come in. She opened the door and stepped aside. Thomas Berkowitz rose from behind a massive mahogany desk. He was a small man with wild gray hair and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and passion. Mr. Thompson. He rushed forward and grasped Marcus's hand with both of his. The man of the hour. Please sit down. Marcus sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. I'll get right to the point, Berkowitz said, returning to his desk. I want you here. I want you as our principal pianist, and I want to announce it at our winter gala next month. That's a generous offer, sir. It's not generosity, it's desperation. Berkowitz leaned forward. The classical music world is dying, Mr. Thompson. Attendance is down. Donations are shrinking. Young people think orchestras are relics of a dusty past. He smiled. Then you came along. A janitor who plays Chopin like Horowitz. A working-class black man who makes billionaires look like fools. You're not just talented, you're a story. And stories are what we need to survive. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand, but I need to know something. Anything. Caroline Ashworth. You mentioned she's trying to acquire Lincoln Center. What exactly does that mean? Berkowitz's expression darkened. It means she wants to buy enough board seats to control our programming, our hiring, and our public image. She's already acquired 3 seats through proxies. If she gets 2 more, she'll have a majority. He paused. And if that happens, everything changes. Lincoln Center becomes Ashworth Center. Our mission becomes her mission. And people like you, people like me get pushed back into the shadows. Exactly. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When is the vote for the remaining board seats? 6 weeks, the winter gala. Berkowitz's eyes met his. The same night I want to announce your appointment. So this isn't just a job offer. It's a chess move. Berkowitz didn't deny it. Caroline Ashworth has spent 2 years positioning herself to take over this institution. If we announce you as our principal pianist at the gala, it sends a message. A very public message that Lincoln Center values talent over pedigree, merit over money. And it makes me her primary target. Yes. Berkowitz's voice was heavy. I won't lie to you, Mr. Thompson. Accepting this position puts you directly in Caroline Ashworth's crosshairs. She will do everything in her power to destroy you before that gala. If you want to walk away, I understand completely. Marcus thought about his mother in that hospital bed, about Destiny at Columbia, about Jerome and James and everyone who had risked something to help him get here. He thought about his father's last words. Don't let the music die, son. I'm not walking away, Marcus said. I'm walking forward. Berkowitz smiled. Then welcome to Lincoln Center, Mr. Thompson. Let's make some history. They shook hands. At 4:45 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Hello. Mr. Thompson. A woman's voice. Cold. Familiar. I believe we have unfinished business. Caroline Ashworth. Marcus's blood went cold, but he kept his voice steady. I don't believe we have any business at all, Mrs. Ashworth. Oh, but we do. You see, I've been thinking about our little encounter at the gala, about how you humiliated me in front of everyone who matters. Her voice hardened. I don't like being humiliated, Mr. Thompson. Then perhaps you shouldn't humiliate others. A long pause. You have spirit. I'll give you that. Most people in your position would be begging for mercy by now. I'm not most people. No, you're not. Another pause. Which is why I'm going to give you one chance. One opportunity to walk away from all of this unscathed. I'm listening. Turn down the Lincoln Center position. Withdraw from Juilliard. Disappear back into whatever shadow you crawled out of. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And I'll leave your family alone. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. What did you just say? Your mother is recovering nicely, I hear. Room 412 at Mount Sinai. And your sister Destiny, such a bright future ahead of her. Columbia Pre-Med. Very impressive. If you touch them, I don't need to touch them, Mr. Thompson. I just need to make a few phone calls. Your mother's anonymous donor could become very anonymous indeed. Hospitals have a way of discovering billing errors, don't they? And Columbia has such strict policies about scholarship recipients maintaining certain standards. Marcus felt rage building in his chest like a furnace. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? Caroline laughed softly. I've destroyed men far more powerful than you, Mr. Thompson. Senators, CEOs, entire companies. Do you really think a janitor from Brooklyn is beyond my reach? Marcus took a deep breath. He thought about James Morrison's USB drive in his pocket. About the files that could destroy Caroline Ashworth's empire. But using them now would be too soon. He needed to be strategic. Needed to wait for the right moment. No, he said quietly. No what? No. I'm not going to disappear. No. I'm not going to turn down Lincoln Center. And no. I'm not afraid of you. Silence on the other end. You should be, Caroline finally said. You really should be. The line went dead. Marcus stood on the street outside Lincoln Center, his hands shaking with a combination of fear and fury. Caroline Ashworth had just threatened his family. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He pulled out his phone and made a call. James Morrison answered on the first ring. She called me, Marcus said. She threatened my mother and sister. A long pause. Then it's time to stop playing defense. James's voice was cold and hard. It's time to fight back. How? Meet me tomorrow, same place, same time. James paused. And bring the USB drive. We're going to war. Marcus hung up and looked at the Lincoln Center building towering above him. 6 weeks until the winter gala. 6 weeks until the board vote. 6 weeks to survive whatever Caroline Ashworth was planning. He didn't know if he could win this war. Didn't know if he could protect his family and his dreams and everything he had just begun to rebuild. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't going to hide anymore. Not from Caroline Ashworth. Not from anyone. The invisible man was gone forever, and in his place stood something far more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose. 2 weeks had passed since Caroline Ashworth's threat. 2 weeks of looking over his shoulder. 2 weeks of checking his phone every hour for bad news. 2 weeks of watching his mother recover while wondering if someone would walk into her hospital room and destroy everything. But nothing happened. And that silence terrified Marcus more than any threat. At 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, his phone rang. James Morrison. "Turn on the news," James said. "Channel 4, now." Marcus grabbed the remote in his mother's hospital room and switched channels. Caroline Ashworth's face filled the screen. She was standing at a podium, surrounded by reporters, her expression perfectly composed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "I am here to announce a major initiative that will transform the future of classical music in America." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Ashworth Pharmaceuticals, in partnership with the Sterling Foundation, is proud to establish the National Excellence in Music Scholarship Program. This $50 million fund will provide full scholarships to talented young musicians from underprivileged backgrounds. The reporters erupted with questions. Caroline held up her hand for silence. "This program was inspired by a recent event that touched my heart deeply. Many of you saw the viral video of a young janitor playing piano at our charity gala. What you didn't see was my reaction afterward." She paused, letting the cameras capture her carefully manufactured sincerity. "I was moved. Genuinely moved. Here was a man with extraordinary talent who had been denied opportunity simply because of his circumstances. And I asked myself, how many more Marcus Thompsons are out there? How many geniuses are mopping floors because no one gave them a chance?" Marcus couldn't breathe. She was using him, using his story, turning his triumph into her redemption narrative. "That's why I'm announcing today that Marcus Thompson will be the first recipient of our National Excellence Scholarship. Full tuition to any conservatory of his choice. Living stipend. Performance opportunities." Caroline smiled at the cameras. "Because at Ashworth Pharmaceuticals, we believe that excellence knows no boundaries." The screen cut to footage of Marcus playing at the gala. His phone buzzed. Text from Destiny. "Are you seeing this?" Another buzz. "Jerome. She's trying to own you. Don't let her." Another. "Dr. Chen from Juilliard. Please call me immediately. We need to discuss this development." Marcus turned off the television. His mother was watching him from her hospital bed, her eyes filled with concern. "Baby, what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." His hands were shaking. "She's trying to make it look like she's my benefactor. Like everything I achieve from now on is because of her generosity." "Then don't take it." "If I don't take it, I look ungrateful. The whole world will see her offer and my rejection. She'll spin it to make me look arrogant. Difficult." Grace reached for his hand. "Marcus, look at me." He met her eyes. "You have spent your whole life letting other people define your worth. Your father and I taught you to be humble, and that's good. But there's a difference between humility and letting people walk all over you." Her grip tightened. "That woman wants to own your story. Don't let her. You write your own story." Marcus nodded slowly. "I need to make some calls." At 9:15 a.m., Marcus sat in the coffee shop with James Morrison and a woman he had never met. "This is Sandra Chen," James said. "No relation to the dean at Juilliard. She's an investigative journalist with the New York Times. She's been tracking Ashworth Pharmaceuticals for 3 years." Sandra extended her hand. She was small and tense with eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Mr. Thompson, I've wanted to meet you since that video went viral. Why? Because you're the first person who's ever made Caroline Ashworth look human, and humans can be defeated. Sandra leaned forward. James tells me you have files, evidence of criminal activity. Marcus pulled the USB drive from his pocket and set it on the table. Everything's on there, 20 years of evidence. Sandra picked up the drive like it was made of gold. This is what I've been waiting for. With this, we can destroy her. How long? To verify everything. Build an airtight story. Get legal clearance from the Times, Sandra calculated in her head. 6 weeks minimum. The Winter Gala is in 4 weeks. I know. Sandra's expression hardened. That's the problem. If we publish before we're ready, she'll sue us into oblivion. Every fact needs to be triple verified. Every source needs to be protected. So what do I do until then? Sandra and James exchanged glances. You survive, James said. You keep your head down, accept the Juilliard scholarship, and prepare for the gala. When Sandra's story breaks, it will be devastating. But until then, Caroline holds all the cards. Marcus thought about his mother, about destiny, about everything he had built in the past 2 weeks. What about her scholarship announcement, the $50 million program? Sandra almost smiled. Decline it. What? Decline it publicly. Make a statement. Tell the world you're grateful for the offer, but you've already accepted a full scholarship to Juilliard. Thank her for her generosity, and wish her program well. That's it. That's it. It's polite, it's professional, and it takes her weapon away without giving her ammunition to use against you. Sandra stood up. I need to start analyzing these files. James has my number. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. She walked out with the USB drive. James finished his coffee and looked at Marcus. There's something else you should know. What? Caroline's press conference wasn't spontaneous. She's been planning this for days. Someone leaked your Juilliard acceptance to her before it was publicly announced. Marcus felt cold. Someone at Juilliard. Or someone close to you. She has sources everywhere, Marcus. Trust no one you haven't known for years. James stood up. I'll be in touch. Be careful. At 11:00 a.m., Marcus held his own press conference. It was small, just a few reporters gathered outside Juilliard. Nothing compared to Caroline's production, but the cameras were rolling and his words would reach millions. I want to thank Mrs. Ashworth for her generous offer, Marcus said, reading from notes he had written an hour ago. Her commitment to supporting young musicians from underprivileged backgrounds is admirable, and I hope her program helps many talented individuals achieve their dreams. He paused. However, I must respectfully decline the National Excellence Scholarship. I have already accepted a full scholarship to the Juilliard School of Music, where I will be completing the education that was interrupted 7 years ago. The reporters began shouting questions. Marcus held up his hand. I also want to address the circumstances that have brought us here. 2 weeks ago, I was publicly humiliated at a charity gala. I was called unworthy. I was told that people like me didn't belong near expensive instruments or refined culture. He looked directly into the cameras. I played anyway. Not to prove anything to Mrs. Ashworth or to anyone else. I played because music is who I am. It's what my grandfather taught me. It's what my father sacrificed for. It's what my mother prayed for every night while working 3 jobs to keep our family together. His voice grew stronger. Excellence is not something that can be given or taken away by wealthy donors. Excellence is not about pedigree or privilege. Excellence is about dedication, sacrifice, love. He paused. I don't need anyone's permission to be excellent, and neither does anyone else. He turned and walked back into Juilliard without taking questions. Behind him, he could hear the reporters scrambling to file their stories. He had thrown the first real punch. Now he would see how Caroline Ashworth responded. At 3:47 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. That was a very impressive speech, Mr. Thompson. Caroline's voice was ice. Inspiring, really. The humble janitor who doesn't need handouts from billionaires. What do you want? I want to warn you. You've made a mistake. Have I? You've embarrassed me twice now. Once at the gala, once at that pathetic little press conference. Her voice dropped. There won't be a third time. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Caroline paused. Operation Restoration begins tomorrow. By the time the Winter Gala arrives, you won't have a career, you won't have a reputation, and you won't have anywhere left to hide. I'm not hiding anymore, Mrs. Ashworth. I'm standing right here. Then you're a fool. She laughed softly. Enjoy your last few weeks of fame, Mr. Thompson. They're going to end very badly. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone. Operation Restoration. Whatever it was coming tomorrow. At 6:00 a.m. the next morning, Marcus woke to 37 missed calls. His phone was exploding. Destiny, Jerome, Dr. Chen, Thomas Berkowitz, James Morrison. Numbers he didn't recognize. He grabbed the phone and called Destiny first. Marcus. She was crying. Have you seen it? Have you seen what they're saying? Seen what? What's happening? Check Twitter, check everywhere. Oh God, Marcus, oh God. He opened Twitter. The first trending hashtag stopped his heart. Hashtag janitor fraud. He clicked it. Thousands of posts, hundreds of thousands, all saying the same thing. Breaking viral piano janitor Marcus Thompson accused of lip-syncing performance. Audio experts claim video was dubbed with professional recording. Attached was a video. Someone had taken his performance from the gala and overlaid it with analysis graphics. Red circles highlighting supposed sync errors. Expert commentary questioning the authenticity. As you can see here, the video narrator said, the finger movements don't perfectly align with the audio. This is consistent with a pre-recorded track being played while the subject merely pretends to perform. The comment section was a cesspool of hatred. I knew it was too good to be true. Another con artist exposed. This is what happens when you believe viral garbage. Cancel this fraud. Marcus couldn't breathe. It was a lie. A complete fabrication. He had played every note himself. 200 people had watched him do it. But the video looked convincing. The expert analysis sounded authoritative. And millions of people were already believing it. His phone rang. James Morrison. It's Caroline, James said without preamble. She paid for this, hired a video editing company to create the fake analysis, paid social media influencers to spread it. Can you prove it? Not yet, but I'm working on it. James paused. Marcus, this is just the beginning. She's going to keep hitting you until you break. You need to be ready. How do I fight this? You perform again, live, in front of witnesses who can verify it's real. James's voice hardened. You give her no room to hide behind her lies. Marcus ended the call. His phone immediately rang again. Thomas Berkowitz. Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry. I've been watching this unfold all morning. Do you believe it? The fraud claims, of course not. I was there. I watched you play with my own eyes. Berkowitz paused. But public perception matters. If this narrative takes hold, it could affect the board vote at the Winter Gala. What do you need me to do? We need to accelerate our timeline. I want you to perform at a private event next week. Invited guests only. Music critics, board members, potential donors. People whose opinions carry weight. Berkowitz's tone became urgent. If they see you play live, they'll know the truth, and their voices will drown out this nonsense. When? Friday, 8 days from now. Can you be ready? Marcus thought about everything he had been through, everything he had survived. I'll be ready. At 10:30 a.m., Marcus arrived at Mount Sinai to visit his mother. Grace was sitting up in bed watching the news coverage of his scandal. "Turn it off, Mama. I've already seen it all." She muted the television, but kept her eyes on his face. "Sit down, baby." He sat. "Do you remember what your grandfather used to say when people tried to tear him down?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Let them talk. The music speaks louder." "That's right." Grace reached for his hand. "These people don't know you. They don't know your struggle. They don't know the hours you practiced while everyone else slept. They don't know what it cost you to keep this family together." Her voice strengthened. "But God knows, and the truth always comes out eventually." "What if it comes out too late? Then you keep playing anyway." Grace smiled. "You think your grandfather quit when they called him names. You think your father stopped working when people said he'd never amount to anything." She shook her head. "Thompsons don't quit, baby. We just keep going." Marcus squeezed her hand. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too. Now go practice. You've got a performance to prepare for." At 2:00 p.m., Marcus walked into the Juilliard practice rooms. Dr. Chen was waiting for him. "I've arranged for you to have unlimited access to our concert room," the dean said. "Practice as much as you need. We believe in you, Mr. Thompson." "Thank you, sir." "And Marcus." Dr. Chen put a hand on his shoulder. "The faculty has been watching this situation closely. We know the accusations are false, and we're prepared to make a public statement supporting you." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "I appreciate that more than you know." He entered the practice room and sat at the Steinway. For a long moment, he just breathed. Let the silence settle around him. Let the weight of everything fade away. Then he began to play. Not Chopin this time. Not Destiny's composition. Something new. Something raw. Something that poured out of him like blood from a wound. A piece about betrayal and resilience. About being torn down and building yourself back up. About the moment when you realize that your enemies can never take what matters most, because what matters most lives inside you. He played for 4 hours straight. When he finally stopped, his fingers were raw and his face was wet with tears. But he was ready. At 8:00 p.m., his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Thompson." A woman's voice, hesitant, frightened. "Who is this?" "My name is Rebecca Park. I was Caroline Ashworth's publicist." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "You're the one who photographed me at the hospital." "Yes." Her voice cracked. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." "Why are you calling me?" "Because I can't do this anymore." Rebecca was crying now. "I've watched Caroline destroy people for years. Good people. People who didn't deserve it. But this, what she's doing to you, it's too much." "What exactly is she doing?" "Everything. The fraud video was just the beginning. She has more planned. Audio recordings that supposedly prove you cheated. Fake witnesses who will claim they saw you practicing with a pre-recorded track. A private investigator digging through your entire past looking for anything she can use." Marcus felt sick. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want out, and because—" Rebecca took a shaky breath. "Because I kept copies of everything. Every email, every payment receipt, every instruction she gave me." Marcus's heart stopped. "You have proof that Caroline orchestrated this." "I have proof of everything. 10 years of proof." Rebecca paused. "I'll give it to you, all of it, but I need protection. If Caroline finds out I talked to you, she'll destroy me too." "Where are you?" "I'm at a hotel in New Jersey. I've been hiding here for 2 days, trying to work up the courage to call you." Marcus was already grabbing his jacket. "Stay there. I'm coming to you." "Mr. Thompson." "Yes." "Thank you for answering. I wasn't sure you would." Marcus thought about all the people who had helped him in the past 2 weeks. James Morrison, Jerome Williams, Sandra Chen, Dr. Chen, Thomas Berkowitz, now Rebecca Park. One by one, Caroline Ashworth's empire was crumbling from within. "We're going to bring her down," Marcus said. "Together." He hung up and headed for the door. At 10:15 p.m., Marcus sat in a hotel room in Newark, New Jersey, watching Rebecca Park download files onto a laptop. "This is everything," she said, her hands trembling. 10 years of working for Caroline Ashworth. 10 years of watching her destroy innocent people. "Why did you stay so long?" Rebecca laughed bitterly. "Money, fear, the same reasons everyone stays." She looked at him with haunted eyes. "Do you know what it's like to sell your soul one piece at a time, to wake up one day and realize there's nothing left?" Marcus thought about his 7 years of invisibility. 7 years of hiding who he really was. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I do." Rebecca finished the download and handed him the laptop. "Everything you need is on here. Bank transfers proving she paid for the fake video, emails coordinating the social media campaign, instructions to the private investigator." She paused. "There's also something else." "What?" "Recordings. Private conversations between Caroline and her board members. They discuss things that would destroy Ashworth Pharmaceuticals completely." Rebecca's voice dropped. "Including conversations about pricing insulin to maximize deaths among people who couldn't afford treatment." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. She deliberately let people die. Not deliberately, she just didn't care. Rebecca wiped her eyes. "Dead patients don't file lawsuits." That's what she told her CFO. "Dead patients don't file lawsuits." Marcus closed the laptop. "This ends now," he said. "All of it." He pulled out his phone and called Sandra Chen. "I have more evidence," he said when she answered. "A lot more, and a witness who's willing to testify." Sandra's voice was sharp with excitement. "How soon can you get it to me?" "Tonight." "Then bring it. We're going to print this story before the Winter Gala. Caroline Ashworth's reign of terror is about to end." Marcus hung up and looked at Rebecca. "Thank you for doing this. I know it wasn't easy." Rebecca managed a weak smile. "Maybe now I can start being the person I was supposed to be." Marcus helped her pack her things. They had a long night ahead of them. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The morning of the Winter Gala arrived with a phone call that changed everything. At 6:47 a.m. Sandra Chen's voice crackled through Marcus's phone. "It's done. The story goes live in 1 hour." Marcus sat up in his childhood bed, heart pounding. Everything. Everything. Price fixing, bribery, the deaths she covered up, the fraud campaign against you. Sandra paused. "Marcus, this is going to be the biggest corporate scandal since Enron. By tonight, Caroline Ashworth won't just be finished. She'll be facing federal charges." "Does she know it's coming?" "Not yet. We kept everything locked down until the last possible moment." Sandra's voice hardened. "But she will soon. Be careful today. Cornered animals are the most dangerous." Marcus ended the call and stared at the ceiling. Tonight was the Winter Gala. Tonight was his performance. Tonight was the board vote that would determine Lincoln Center's future. And in 1 hour, Caroline Ashworth's empire would begin to crumble. He got out of bed and started preparing for the most important day of his life. At 7:45 a.m., the New York Times website updated with a massive headline: "Ashworth Pharmaceuticals, a decade of death, deception, and destruction." The story was 40,000 words long. It named names. It showed receipts. It quoted insiders, including James Morrison and Rebecca Park, who had agreed to go on the record. Within minutes, the story was everywhere. CNN broke into regular programming. Fox News scrambled to cover it. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding justice. Ashworth scandal trended worldwide within 30 minutes. #justice. For Marcus, followed right behind it. At 8:23 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. Thomas Berkowitz. "Have you seen the news?" Berkowitz's voice was breathless with excitement. I've seen it. Caroline just withdrew from the board vote. Her proxies are abandoning her. The acquisition is dead, Marcus. Lincoln Center is safe. Marcus closed his eyes and let the relief wash over him. What about tonight? Tonight happens exactly as planned. You perform, we celebrate, and we show the world what Lincoln Center stands for. Berkowitz paused. Are you ready? Marcus thought about everything he had been through. The humiliation, the threats, the fake fraud accusations, the sleepless nights wondering if his family was safe. I've been ready my whole life, he said. At 10:00 a.m., Marcus arrived at Mount Sinai Hospital. His mother was being discharged today, 4 weeks of recovery, and she was finally coming home. Grace Thompson sat on the edge of her hospital bed, dressed in real clothes for the first time in a month. She looked tired, but radiant. There's my superstar, she said when Marcus walked in. There's my miracle, he replied, hugging her carefully. Destiny was already there, bouncing with excitement. Mom, have you seen Twitter? Caroline Ashworth is finished. They're saying she might go to prison. I've seen it, baby. Grace looked at Marcus with eyes full of pride. My son took down a billionaire. Never thought I'd say those words. I had help, Marcus said. A lot of help. That's how it's supposed to work. Grace took his hand. Your grandfather always said, no one succeeds alone, and no one fails alone either. She squeezed his fingers. You remembered that. You let people help you. That's why you won. A nurse appeared with discharge papers. Mrs. Thompson, you're all set. Just need a few signatures and you're free to go. Grace signed the papers with a flourish. Take me home, she said. I've got a concert to attend tonight. At 12:30 p.m., Marcus stood in the apartment where he had grown up. It looked different now, cleaner, brighter. Destiny had spent weeks preparing for their mother's return. Fresh flowers sat on the kitchen table. New curtains hung in the windows. And on the wall, a framed photograph of Marcus at the piano during the viral performance. Where did you get that? He asked. Jerome gave it to me. Destiny grinned. He had it printed and framed the day after the gala, said it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever witnessed. Marcus stared at the photograph. The man in the picture didn't look like a janitor. He looked like an artist, a warrior, someone who had found himself in the fire and emerged transformed. I almost forgot who I was, Marcus said quietly. Grace came up behind him and put her hand on his shoulder. You didn't forget, baby. You just put yourself aside for a while. That's what love does sometimes. She turned him to face her. But now it's your turn. You hear me? No more sacrificing your dreams for everyone else. Tonight, you play for yourself. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. At 3:00 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Thompson? Caroline Ashworth's voice was unrecognizable. Broken. Defeated. Mrs. Ashworth? I suppose you're enjoying this, watching everything I built collapse. Marcus was quiet for a moment. No, I'm not enjoying it. Don't lie to me. I destroyed your reputation. I threatened your family. I did everything I could to break you. Her voice cracked. And you won anyway. I didn't do this to win. I did it to survive. Caroline laughed bitterly. Survival. That's all any of us are doing, really. Surviving. She paused. I'm calling because I need you to know something. What? I'm sorry. Marcus blinked. Whatever he had expected, it wasn't this. I'm sorry for what I did to you at the gala, for the things I said, for the person I've become. Caroline's voice was thick with tears. I used to be different, you know, when I was young, before the money and the power consumed everything. Why are you telling me this? Because in a few hours I'm going to be arrested. The FBI is already outside my building, and I wanted someone to know that I wasn't always a monster. She took a shaky breath. I wanted you to know that what you did that night, the way you played it, was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And I destroyed you for it because I was jealous. Marcus didn't know what to say. Jealous of what? Of your gift, of your dignity, of the way you stood there and refused to be broken. Caroline's voice dropped to a whisper. I spent my whole life trying to buy what you have naturally, and I never understood that it can't be bought. It can only be earned. Silence stretched between them. Goodbye, Mr. Thompson. Play beautifully tonight. Play for all the people I hurt. Play for everyone who never got their chance. The line went dead. Marcus stood in his mother's kitchen holding the phone, feeling something he never expected to feel for Caroline Ashworth. Pity. At 5:30 p.m., Marcus arrived at Lincoln Center. The building buzzed with preparation for the winter gala. Caterers rushed through corridors. Musicians tuned instruments. Board members gathered in private rooms to discuss the future. Thomas Berkowitz met Marcus at the stage door. Are you ready? I'm ready. Good, because there's been a change of plans. Berkowitz's eyes twinkled. The board voted an hour ago, unanimously. They want you to open the gala, not close it. Open it. They want the first thing everyone sees tonight to be the man who saved Lincoln Center, the man who proved that talent matters more than money. Berkowitz put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You're not just performing tonight, Mr. Thompson. You're making a statement, to the world, about who we are and what we stand for. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settle onto his shoulders. But this time, it didn't feel crushing. It felt like wings. At 7:00 p.m., the Winter Gala began. 2,000 of New York's most influential people filled Lincoln Center's main concert hall. Board members and celebrities, critics and composers, ordinary music lovers who had won lottery tickets for the most anticipated cultural event of the year. And in the front row, 3 seats reserved with special cards. Grace Thompson, Destiny Thompson, Jerome Williams. Marcus watched them from backstage, his heart full to bursting. His mother sat straight and proud wearing a dress Destiny had bought her with her first paycheck from a tutoring job. Jerome wore the same suit he had worn to Marcus's father's funeral, the only formal wear he owned. They were there. They had always been there. And tonight, they would see him fly. At 7:15 p.m., Thomas Berkowitz took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lincoln Center Winter Gala. Applause filled the hall. Tonight is a celebration of music, of perseverance, of the belief that excellence can emerge from anywhere and anyone. Berkowitz paused. Many of you know the story of our opening performer, a janitor who was publicly humiliated for daring to approach a piano, a man who answered cruelty with beauty, a musician who reminded us all that talent doesn't require permission. The audience murmured with recognition. What you may not know is the rest of his story. How he sacrificed a Juilliard scholarship to support his family. How he spent 7 years in silence, never losing his gift, only waiting for the moment to share it again. Berkowitz's voice grew emotional. Tonight, that moment has arrived. He turned toward the wings. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marcus Thompson. The applause began before Marcus even stepped onto the stage. He walked toward the Steinway grand piano, like a man walking toward destiny. Each step was steady. Each breath was calm. The fear that had paralyzed him at the gala was gone, replaced by something stronger. Purpose. He reached the piano and turned to face the audience. 2,000 people. 2,000 faces. 2,000 hearts waiting to be moved. And in the front row, his mother was already crying. Marcus sat at the bench and adjusted its height. The keys gleamed under the stage lights. The instrument hummed with anticipation. He leaned toward the microphone. 7 years ago, I made a promise to my dying father. I told him I would take care of our family. And I did. His voice was steady. But I also made a promise to my grandfather when I was 9 years old. I told him I would never let the music die. He paused. Tonight, I'm keeping both promises. He turned to the piano and began to play. The opening notes of Destiny's composition filled the concert hall like light filling a darkened room. The scaffold. The piece his sister had written for their father. The piece about sacrifice and love and the price we pay for the people we cherish. But Marcus didn't play it the way he had practiced. He played it the way he felt it. Every note carried the weight of 7 years of silence. Every phrase breathed with the joy of resurrection. Every chord rang with gratitude for the people who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. The audience sat transfixed. Grace Thompson wept openly, her hands pressed to her heart. Destiny gripped Jerome's arm, unable to speak. Jerome himself sat with tears streaming down his weathered face, nodding slowly, as if confirming something he had always known. The composition built toward its climax. Marcus's hands flew across the keys with a precision that defied his years away from formal training. But it wasn't just technique. It was soul. It was story. It was the accumulated pain and hope of generations pouring through his fingers. The moment arrived. The cascade of notes that represented the scaffolding collapse. The impact. The loss. Marcus played it with such raw emotion that several audience members gasped audibly. Then the resolution. Soft, tender, heartbreaking in its beauty. A single melodic line rising from the destruction. A son's promise to a dying father. A family's refusal to be broken by tragedy. The final chord hung in the air like a prayer. Silence. Complete. Perfect. Sacred. Then the concert hall exploded. 2,000 people leaped to their feet simultaneously. The applause was deafening. People were cheering, crying, embracing strangers beside them. Thomas Berkowitz stood at the edge of the stage, tears streaming down his face, applauding with everyone else. Marcus rose from the piano bench and faced the audience. He found his mother's eyes in the front row. She was standing, her hands raised toward him, her face radiant with pride and love and vindication. "That's my baby," she shouted loud enough to be heard over the applause. "That's my son." The audience laughed and cheered even louder. Marcus stepped to the front of the stage and took a bow. But he wasn't finished. He raised his hand for silence. The applause gradually faded. "I need to say something," Marcus said into the microphone. The audience waited. 6 weeks ago, I was invisible. I mopped floors for people who never saw me. I cleaned toilets for people who thought I was less than human. He paused. One of those people tried to destroy me. She called me worthless. She said I didn't belong near beautiful things. The audience was absolutely still. But she was wrong, not just about me, about all of us. Marcus's voice strengthened. Excellence doesn't come from money. Dignity doesn't come from status. Worth doesn't come from what you own, or where you were born, or what family name you carry. He looked at his mother, at Destiny, at Jerome. Excellence comes from love, from sacrifice, from the people who believe in you when the world says you're nothing. His voice broke slightly. I'm standing here tonight because of a grandfather who taught me scales by lamplight, because of a father who died believing I would make something of myself, because of a mother who prayed every night that her children would have better lives than she did. Grace was sobbing now, her hand over her mouth. And because of a sister who wrote this beautiful music and trusted me to bring it to life. Marcus smiled at Destiny through his own tears. This performance was for all of you. For everyone who ever felt invisible. For everyone who was told they didn't belong. He straightened his shoulders. You belong. We all belong. And no billionaire, no scandal, no amount of cruelty can ever take that away. The audience erupted again. But this time the applause was different. It wasn't just appreciation for music. It was recognition. It was solidarity. It was 2,000 people acknowledging a truth they had needed to hear. Marcus Thompson had not just played a concert. He had started a revolution. At 9:30 p.m., the gala continued with champagne and conversation. Marcus stood near the stage, surrounded by people who wanted to shake his hand, take his photograph, offer him recording contracts and concert tours and opportunities that would have seemed impossible 6 weeks ago. But he kept looking toward the corner where his family waited. Finally, he excused himself and pushed through the crowd. Grace pulled him into her arms the moment he reached her. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Your father is so proud. Your grandfather is so proud. I couldn't have done it without you, Mama." "Yes, you could have." She pulled back and looked into his eyes. "That's what you never understood, baby. The gift was always inside you. We just helped you remember it was there." Destiny hugged him next, squeezing so tight he could barely breathe. "You played my piece," she said. "You played it perfectly." "It's a perfect piece. I wrote it for Dad, but tonight I realized I wrote it for you too." Destiny wiped her eyes. "For everything you sacrificed, for everything you gave up so I could have a future. That's what big brothers do." "No." Destiny shook her head. "That's what heroes do." Jerome was last. The old security guard stood with his hands clasped in front of him, his weathered face wet with tears he wasn't bothering to hide. "Jerome, Don't." Jerome held up his hand. "Don't thank me, don't say anything." He took a shaky breath. "I spent 40 years watching talented people walk through Lincoln Center, famous people, celebrated people. But I never saw anyone play like you played tonight. You gave me the chance to practice. Without me, nothing." Jerome's voice was firm. "The music was always inside you, Marcus. I just unlocked a door. You walked through it yourself." He pulled Marcus into a hug. "Your grandfather would be proud," Jerome whispered. "So damn proud." At 10:45 p.m., Marcus stepped outside Lincoln Center for air. The night was cold and clear. Stars glittered above Manhattan's towers. The city hummed with its eternal energy, indifferent to the drama that had unfolded within these walls. His phone buzzed. "James Morrison. I watched the performance online. You were extraordinary." "Thank you. For everything." "I just got word from Sandra. Caroline Ashworth was arrested 2 hours ago. Federal charges. The investigation is expanding to include her entire board." Marcus leaned against the building and let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for 6 weeks. "Is it really over?" "The criminal case is just beginning. But for you, yes." James paused. "You won, Marcus. You actually won. We won. All of us. No, we helped. But you're the one who stood up when it would have been easier to stay invisible. You're the one who played when everyone expected you to fail." James's voice was thick with emotion. "You're the one who reminded us all what courage looks like." The call ended. Marcus stood alone in the cold night air, thinking about everything that had happened. 6 weeks ago, he had been a janitor, invisible, forgotten, convinced that his dreams were dead and buried. Now, he was a Juilliard student, a Lincoln Center artist, a symbol of something bigger than himself. But more than that, he was finally free. Free from the shadows, free from the silence, free from the prison of his own making. The door behind him opened. Destiny stepped out, shivering in the cold. "There you are. Mom's asking for you. She wants a family photo before we leave." Marcus smiled. "Tell her I'll be right there." "Marcus." "Yeah." Destiny walked to him and took his hand. "I never told you this, but when Dad died, I thought our family was finished. I thought we would fall apart without him." She squeezed his fingers. "But you held us together. Every day for 7 years you held us together. And I never thanked you for that." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." Destiny's eyes glistened. "Thank you for being my brother. Thank you for being my hero. Thank you for showing me that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way forward." Marcus pulled her into a hug. "Come on," he said. Let's go take that photo. They walked back inside together. At 11:30 p.m., the Thompson family stood in front of Lincoln Center for a photograph. Grace in the middle, Marcus on her right, Destiny on her left. Jerome standing proudly behind them, included in the family portrait because he had become family. The photographer counted down. 3, 2, 1. The flash captured the moment. 4 people who had survived tragedy, who had supported each other through impossible circumstances, who had refused to let cruelty and adversity break their spirits. A family forged in fire, unbreakable, eternal. 3 months later, Marcus Thompson performed at Carnegie Hall to a sold-out audience of 3,000 people. The New York Times called it the most anticipated debut in a generation. The program included works by Chopin, Rachmaninoff, and Beethoven. But the finale was something different. A new composition written by Marcus himself. He called it Invisible. The piece began in near silence. A single note repeated, barely audible. The sound of someone who has been overlooked, forgotten, dismissed. Then gradually other voices joined, building, strengthening, rising from whispers to declarations. The middle section was turbulent, dissonant, full of struggle and conflict and the desperate fight to be seen. But the ending was triumphant. A cascade of major chords that seemed to shake the walls of Carnegie Hall. A declaration that invisibility was not permanent, that silence was not surrender, that every human being carried within them the capacity for extraordinary things. When the final chord faded, the audience sat in stunned silence for 10 full seconds. Then they rose as one. The standing ovation lasted 11 minutes. In the front row, Grace Thompson wept with joy. Destiny screamed her brother's name. Jerome Williams stood with his hand over his heart, nodding slowly as if the universe had finally delivered on a promise made long ago. Marcus Thompson took his bow, not as a janitor, not as a victim, not as the man Caroline Ashworth had tried to destroy, but as the artist he had always been. The artist his grandfather had seen in him when he was 9 years old. The artist his father had believed in until his last breath. The artist who had emerged from 7 years of silence to prove that excellence needs no permission, dignity cannot be destroyed, and the music that lives inside us never truly dies. It only waits for the right moment to finally be heard. And Marcus Thompson's moment had arrived.